All right. Vukasin Pekovic, Serbian sensation. I think that's what I'm going to call you, the Serbian sensation.
Let's not put the bar too high. There is a saying over here: when they promise you a lot, come with a small bag.
Yeah, that's a good expression. So, I knew of you 1 year ago, but I didn't really know you. I didn't really follow you or read your content. I wasn't really paying attention. And then the Awale thing happened. I think it was in March, probably late March. And I started paying a lot more attention. And now, since then, you've had some new ideas. You've had some different ideas, and some of them have worked out. So I'm kind of interested to delve in a little deeper, learn a little more about your process, and maybe we'll talk about some stocks. I got about an hour for this conversation, then I have to go to a dental operation on a Friday afternoon. Fun. But my first question for you, Vuk, is, do you ever sleep? Because I feel like you're online a lot. You're commenting a lot, whether it's on X or co.ca, talking to people a lot. When do you sleep, and how much time, do you think you spend on a weekly basis on junior mining and the markets?
That's a good question, to which honestly I don't really have a straight answer, but I definitely do sleep. And if I were forced to define my schedule, it would be, say, sleep from 3 or 4 a.m. to 10 or 11 maybe in the morning. Sometimes when I have something to do with Australia, I get up earlier, at like 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. And I mean, I'm when I'm not at the gym or running an errand or something like that, I'm mostly at my desk most of the time. I don't really have a set schedule. I just work and do stuff until I feel that, things are done. And that's pretty much how I operate. I'm definitely not the type of guy that's going to tell you I wake up in the morning, I write something down in my journal, and then I do a cold plunge or something. No, I'm definitely not that guy. So it's all for people who are much. I'm not a chaotic guy, but somebody who is super orderly might consider my lifestyle to be quite chaotic. So that's how I operate on a daily and weekly basis.
Okay. And you're in your 20s, I think, and you're
I'm
Serbian.
27. Yep.
Yeah, you're 27. You're from Serbia. You live in Serbia. I know Serbia has mining for sure, but it's not like a prominent mining country. It's not the first place that you think of for mining. So how did you get involved, in the sector and following these tiny companies?
Well, Serbia is a mining country, I would say. The population is not particularly pro-mining unless it is quote unquote done by the government or something like that, which is not possible in a place like Serbia, right? But I would say that we are a mining country. Not that it has or had anything to do with my involvement in the sector, but what we definitely are not, we're not a serious business country, and so especially not a business country from the standpoint of capital markets and venture capital in mining or pretty much any other venture capital. We do have some really good tech startups and some success in tech, but it's like Serbia is definitely not known, especially as a post-communist country, not known for its business environment, right? So that would be a quick note on the country there. But the way how I got involved in the sector and, let's say started looking, as you say, at the small companies is, well, I have an engineering background, right? And I wanted to get into finance, not necessarily finance. I wanted to do business. And, what's pretty funny about being from a place like this, and I'm not knocking, on my own country at all. Like we're a very civilized place. Not too serious politically and as a kind of an organization, right? Organization wise, but we are very civilized and it's a peaceful country. It's a nice place to live. But being a businessman in a post-communist place is not that something that has a positive connotation, So off of that, I literally had no idea how to start investing or doing business or whatever, but that is what I figured out that I should do in my life at around, I think, the second or third year of my university. So at the beginning of my third year, I was basically like, thinking that I was going to graduate one way or another. I realized, it wasn't that hard at that point. So that was going to happen, after year 4, but I need to figure out what to do with my life, right? And, roughly during COVID, in the beginning of COVID and 2019 towards 2020, I just started liking gold just from the standpoint, from the macro standpoint, and, pertinent to that, commodities as well. And, I felt that we were going to have, significant changes in how the world operates, in how countries operate, in how economics work. Just from the macro standpoint. And, and let's say I just realized that commodities might be the place to be for the next 10 or 15 years, right? And, of course I had no money back then. I didn't even have a brokerage account or anything. And, at one point I was, while I still had LinkedIn, I was looking at people who were, I remember, for example, seeing that Croatian guy, Kolanovic from JP Morgan, and I realized he's a physicist, right? And the more I looked into finance and business, I realized that there's a bunch of guys who are mathematicians, physicists, engineers, lawyers, maybe even some people from the medical sector and so on and so forth. And I just found that weird, right? I realized this is probably, like, all of this is probably not rocket science. And, maybe I can figure out a way to do it. And, at some point, to put this, story a bit shorter is, I realized that if I were going to try to amount to anything, I should probably pick one thing and try to get really good at it, right? And ideally, and this is how I chose my subjects at university as well, is what does nobody want to do, right? And, somehow I realized that mining is
mining. Nobody wants to do mining.
And somehow I realized that mining was, especially for, I don't know, let's say you take really high-end young people in the US, right? Or I would guess, I mean, Canada is definitely a mining country, but for example, in the US, which is more or less the center of the world, right? Together with China, economics wise, when you look at people who, I don't know, go to, Ivy League schools or whatever, nobody who is at the top, athletes, grades wise, whatever, pretty much none of them, the top people are not gonna at least have mining on the top of their priorities, right? So once I realized that, I was like, okay, this is probably a relatively niche sector. I thought, and I heard many takes that it's a small world, right? And, the longer I'm in it, the more I realize that it's a very small world, actually. And so I was just like, I'm gonna try to learn as much as I can about that. And, maybe I meet some people and see where things go. And, during that period, like 2020, 2021, I finished my university and enrolled, for graduate studies in Belgrade for microwave engineering. And yeah, fun fact, side note, I haven't finished that, right? Because things happened in the meanwhile in the last 3 years. And so, that was my idea, right? And I remember reading, an equity research report. I think it was, I'm actually positive it was from Sprott. And, but I can't remember what the company was. It was probably one of the first kind of well put together PDFs, that I read in its entirety. It might have been, I think, even Wallbridge Mining or something like that, but, like a pretty Canadian gold, junior stock, right? And I remember reading the report, and it was written by some PhD guy, who probably still is an analyst at Sprott, and, I can't remember the name. And I read the whole thing, and I was like, I actually understand everything that is written here, right? And I already had some background, very, very rudimentary basic finance knowledge, right? So I just asked myself, why wouldn't I be able to do this at some point? And, that's how things kicked off. And then in the second half of, 2021, I met my current boss, and, he needed help, and, I applied via email, and we talked a couple of times, and that's how I joined, to help out with the maintaining and updating our database and whatnot at Independent Speculator. So yeah, that is the synopsis.
That's a good background. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing to me to think that you've only been involved in markets and junior mining for barely more than 4 years. That's pretty profound, because some of your insights and some of your knowledge that you've obtained in this relatively short period of time is on par with people that have been in the sector for 30 years and maybe even above many people who have been in the sector for 30 years. It's very interesting. What do you attribute? Is it just that you became obsessed and you said, I'm going to get really good at this?
Well, it probably is. Like it's first of all, thank you, right? And it's a huge compliment, and you're probably overdoing it. Likely, not probably. You're likely overdoing it. But it's. I think I would not to blow my own horn too much, but I do have a personality type where I get not obsessed in a manic way, right? About something, but when I see a point in something and I see a goal and I see purpose, I can do something like for 16 hours a day. I'm not even going to feel it. And that's how I always had phases in my life. Like when I was a kid, like 10 years old, I was really, really horny about fishing, right? So any chance I got, I went to fish, right? For example. And, I also played video games a lot. And I was really good at pretty much anything except, I mean, I was above average in Counter-Strike, right? But I was never able to be really good at that. But, for example, things like League of Legends, World of Warcraft, stuff like that, I was really obsessive and got really, really good in those things. And so pretty much anything that I picked up, of course, sports as well. I used to play basketball and, I do kind of have an athletic background in the family. And, I was pretty good at that, but fortunately I wrecked my knees on time. And I say fortunately because I would not like to be an athlete right now. So I'm kind of, I guess solid at basketball too. And, when that was my thing, in early high school and late elementary school, I was super obsessed with that as well. It's just how I operate, honestly. And, when something has to be done, I mean, I deem something has to be done, I'm just gonna do it. And, yeah. But what do I attribute it to? It's just legwork. Like there's no, and I wish there was something fancy to say about this, but there's really not, when I talk about, let's say about a certain company to somebody, I sometimes have maybe a difficult time getting my point across because, I understand that somebody might not have seen or looked at, say, 10 other similar opportunities, right? But if I come to you and tell you that something looks really good, I'm saying that not because, somebody else told me about that. I'm saying that because I have 10 other similar things in my mind that I think suck compared to that, right? The funny thing is, if you mention a junior name, especially in copper gold, right? I probably already know about it. And, it's just, again, it's brute force. It's just those, I actually haven't read, any of that, but those self-help books that say, 10,000 hours for mastery of something and so on and so forth. I actually believe that stuff is true. I'm just, saying the synopsis of it here. I don't know what the exact figures are, but, the more time you put into something, the better you're going to get. It's very simple.
Yeah, it's true. Hard work does pay off. And it's interesting that you say that you played basketball, you're an athlete. I played chess. I mean, I guess I still do play chess. I'm a chess master. And so I can, comprehend being really good at something, and being
Yep.
really good at basketball. And a lot of these, hedge funds, they will hire people that play chess, that do math, that play sports, and
Yep.
don't even have a background in finance because they
Right.
can train them,
Yep.
I'm interested so you just said if it's a copper gold junior, you probably heard of it. So I'm interested a little bit in your process. So how many ideas do you look at on a weekly or monthly basis? And then can you give us some idea of like, if you go through 50 ideas, do you get one that you're like, okay, I'm going to go, really intense here and I'm going to find out, basically, like everything I can about it.
You can probably, out of 50 names, I'm sure you can come out with 5 that deserve attention, right? I wouldn't be that harsh. Now, are they an instant buy or are they something that deserves a whole lot of attention and your entire bandwidth? That's a completely different question, right? But it is not, this also pertains a lot to your personality type, right? Because if you're a person, and there are a lot of these guys in the sector, you have a lot of people that, I don't want to sound harsh here or whatever, but you have a lot of people who are just perpetually jaded, by the mining sector. And they basically have a case of brain damage from losing money for years and years in mining. And so whatever they see that is new nowadays, they're instantly going to be finding reasons to think that it's going to zero in like 2 months, right? And I'm not saying to be that the way, the right approach is to be unreasonably positive about everything, but you have to have an optimistic mindset in venture capital, because if you do not have that, you're basically destined to lose and miss out on opportunities. You need to approach things with a positive mindset and then discount negative factors on the way as you notify that they exist, right? So that is thing number one. You should approach research, in my mind. You should approach it with a positive mindset, right? And look for things that are good and look for reasons to be positive about something. Because it is very easy, if you know what you're looking at and you know what you're doing, it is very easy to come up with a whole plethora of reasons to be negative about literally everything. And if you do that, again, you're just destined to miss stuff. So first of all, do that. And then, well, in terms of the process, I am not too big, and I actually talked about this in some recent conversations. I'm not too big on, quote unquote, betting on people, right? And, this is I have a twofold reason for this. First of all, I sit where I sit, right? So I'm not in Vancouver, I'm not in Toronto, I'm not in London. Maybe I would like to be in London, I don't know, but, or some other place that is very, very key for this business, right? But, I'm not there. That's the reality of it. And, I'm not the guy who's going to be going into some obscure shell nobody knows about, but I know that in 3 months, some important name is going to do something with it and it's going to go 7x for absolutely no reason, right? So I'm not that guy. That's thing number one. And also pertinent to people, I do not believe, and again, this is just a personal bias, I do not believe that anybody else, even if they work at a company I might buy some stock in or my friend owns some stock in, I don't believe that anybody else wants to make money for me more than I do, right? And so I find it very hard to step away from that thought. And yeah, that's something that I look at as the third or the second, or the second or the third factor, the people, right? And I always ask, like, what the asset is when you look into an individual name, like, where is the project, what's their idea, what's the stage of it, what's the market cap, like, just look at the chart first. That's thing number one. You look at the chart and you instantly may be able to figure out, hey, am I early to this or am I late, right? And then also there are personal biases in looking at charts. Some people just like to pile onto something that's already going up or, has some attention to it. And, other people, and this is my personal bias, I like when it's just down and flat, right? Even when things are quite liquid, I don't mind it that much. Of course, this is, I'm just speaking from, an N equals 1 aspect here. And as a retail investor, I'm perfectly aware that there are, much more serious parties than us, in the sector that can't afford to do these things. And, because of, compliance, size of the portfolio, you name it. But at the same time, I also try, whatever I do for myself, I try to be useful for people who are more serious than I am and wield more serious amounts of capital, right? And that's basically it in terms of the approach. Well, we can, if you want, and I assume you do, we can go a bit more into, what I just mentioned regarding the assets being the number one factor.
Yeah. Actually, you kind of read my mind in a sense. But let me ask you another question first, because you said something interesting there about brain damage, scar tissue. Yep. I remember when I bought my first stock in 2003. My dad sent me a report on Northern Dynasty. It said, this is going to be the greatest mine in the history of the U.S. And I just bought 300,000 shares. And I said, oh my God, Dad, this is amazing. And I bought like 3,000 shares with all the money I had in college. And I was super naive. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. My dad told me this is great. My dad says it's great. It's got to be great, right? Super naive. I had no brain damage. I had no scar tissue. I was super optimistic. And I thought everything was great if it had gold and copper in it, right? Fade the scene 22 years later, I've got some scar tissue. I've got some brain damage. And I think it's just part of, getting older. There's a lot of older people in the junior mining sector. They have a lot of scar tissue from their life and their life experiences and going through bear markets, right? So how do you stay optimistic?
So there is a very, let's say I have a recipe for you, right? And I know this probably hard for some people to accept, but, the reason why these, let's call them instruments, these stocks, right? These instruments are so cool to play with is because they are, uncorrelated to each other. Like the events that happen in, individual companies are completely uncorrelated from one another, right? Stupid example, one company is drilling in BC, the other company is drilling in, West Africa, okay? What do they have in common? Like just from the mathematical point of view? Absolutely nothing, right? And so how do you, after, an XYZ amount of failures, how do you say maintain a positive attitude or just stay sane, right? Well, you just tell yourself that mathematically, and this is very obvious, the fact that something failed 5 years ago, or let's say 3 months ago, it's still a very fresh wound, right? Has absolutely no probabilistic bearing on something completely new that you're looking at right now. So if you are being hyper rational and maybe slightly autistic about it, you can, I think quite easily prove to yourself that, these are just independent events. Like in stochastic processes, they're called independent events. And they just have nothing to do with each other, right? So that is how I think about it. And, I think if you remind yourself of this thing, it's like rehashing a thesis about a company you own, pretty much every single day to yourself, right? If you constantly remind yourself of this, and this is what I plan to do, I think at 40 years old, I won't be a grumpy, jaded guy, right? So, have to just tone down the emotional side of the equation there and think about math.
Very interesting. It's just math. It's just probabilities. It's not personal. Okay.
Yes,
so
exactly. Yeah,
so
that's a very good way to put it. It's not personal. Yes.
So let's talk about projects versus people, because you talk to the Rick Rules of the world, the gray beards, the wise ones of the sector who know all. And they talk a lot about people. It's a people business. You've got to know the people. You've got to trust the people. You got to know the people are working for your interests. So why is that maybe not quite as important as some of those gray beards think? And why are the projects so important?
Yeah. So, let's just talk, from the hypothetical aspect of a retail guy who is not in Vancouver, right? You just see stocks. You just see charts on the screen. You're at your desktop in your underwear and, you're not there. And this is a very rudimentary example. Let's say you have, almost a nano cap, 10 million, Canadian market cap, and they're drilling. Okay. Again, rudimentary extreme example, and they're drilling. If that drill hole that's going to generate a news release that is going to change the perception of that company in the market size, it doesn't matter who is positioning that drill hole, right? It can be drilled by monkeys. But if that news release comes out, that stock is going to go up 5 times. And yes, I'm giving an extreme example here. This is again not really a useful thing for serious people, right? But I'm talking about from the standpoint of a retail guy from wherever in the world. So why is this important? And why does this pertain to your question? Well, if you think about Rick's position or anybody else who is at that level in the sector, they wield connections and they wield amounts of capital that you cannot relate to. And in these practical examples where Rick or anybody else similar is going to come in and tell you, well, it's completely normal to have a 50% plus drawdown on something that you know is going, I mean, not know, but you know that quote, all my 10 baggers went down at least 50% or more before they became 10 baggers, and they all took 5 years or more, right? Well, I think the part that is being missed there is that those huge wins are all very close personal relationships with those management teams. That's number one, something most small investors and maybe even some bigger ones cannot afford, whether it's just due to stature or lack of time. Number two, what is also not being told to you there is that if there were multiple entries into that position, right? Let's say they started off in year one, they refinanced it. It failed on the first idea. It goes down 85%. He's just going to finance it again. And he's not only going to use his own money, which is abundant, and he probably did a 0.4% position on that. And he's going to finance it again. He's not just going to use his capital. He's going to use other people's money as well. And this is a process that eventually ends up in what the graybeards like to quote as like, oh, we did a 70x or something, right? And when you look at it like this, you realize that all this is a streak of events that just most people cannot afford for themselves, right? You're just not there. So there are very, very special circumstances about and in all of these stories that are not being mentioned when the stories are told, right? And this is not out of I think not even close, like not because of the storyteller's ambition to obfuscate something or lie to us, not at all. It's just for the sake of simplicity and for the sake of, you know, if Rick went into telling the story, I guess let's take some stupid example like Kamoa-Kakula, right? If Rick actually told you about the entire ordeal of how Ivanhoe Mines became Ivanhoe Mines, it would probably take a 2-hour podcast to do it, right? So there is a lot more to shove into that signal, and so a lot of things don't get said just for efficiency purposes, not because somebody has the intention to lie or something like that.
Yeah, you make some very good points, and I think of somebody like Rick. I think he's 70 or 71, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe he's been at the game for 40 years. That's a huge body of work. That's
100%.
Several market cycles, several bull markets, several bear markets, and plenty of opportunities to get in at the absolute bottom with warrants and full warrants and all the good stuff and ride a bull market cycle, right? So basically,
20%.
His wealth and his track record is an accumulation of being in the game and playing the game at a high level over a very long period of time.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so I'm interested a little more fundamentals versus. You're basically a fundamental guy, as far as I know. Do you look at charts at all? Do you care about the macro at all? What's your process like?
So in terms of charts, I did mention it. Like the first thing that when somebody, let's say somebody comes in with a completely new name to you, the first thing that you do, you're going to look at the chart, right? But I'm not going to be drawing lines on the chart because I honestly have no idea about that. And, it's more, I don't know, I don't believe in that. So I'm not going to be doing that. It's just for a rough gauge of, okay, what's the market cap? How many shares are outstanding? Does the chart look, like vertical, or does it look like it's dead, right? So I'm going to look at that, but no, I'm not going to be drawing lines or anything like that. So that's answer number one. Number two is, sorry, what was the second question?
Does the macro matter to you at all?
Oh yeah, sorry. For sure. Yes, this is very important. And, as I said in the beginning, this is how I quote unquote figured out that, commodities were going to be a hot topic for the foreseeable future. And, it's important But again, what is really funny and cheeky about these, again, let's call them instruments, is that most of them are alpha instruments, right? And they're going to be trading on the basis of what the fundamentals of their underlying ventures are. Let's not even call them businesses, call them ventures. They're going to be trading based on that, not on the fact that gold is up $300 or down $300. And this is something I like, right? And of course, there are also venture businesses, i.e. juniors, that trade on the basis of where the underlying commodity is. But to go a bit more here on the macro is exactly why and geology as well, we can get to that too, but why I'm extremely biased towards copper and gold, right? In my mind, you want to choose something that has a secular tailwind behind it, like let's call it a secular bull market, and then hone in on figuring out what are the best things inside that theme, right? And then those best things are going to work out, as I said, irrespective of gold being up or down $300 in a year. But at the same time, you're going to spend enough time in that theme that even if you get some things wrong, you are going to, at some point, going to get saved by the secular bull market. So, that would be, I think, a quick comment on the macro. And on the geology end, well, there are a lot of things to be said, honestly, here. But, copper, gold, I think, my impression is that copper and gold, assets, of course, this is hard rock mining, right, are the most studied and, the most known, deposit and, system models in geology, right? So when you see something that is early stage, and, I'm sorry, but this is where most of the returns are, in very early stage stuff that you cannot really, quantify precisely. But, when you look at data, you can figure out a way to connect those early bits that you get about a certain asset with maybe a historical success or failure, right? Because these projects are so abundant and they are so well studied. I mean, take porphyries, right? You can find 10 or 15 lectures just on YouTube for free that you can listen to. Yes, if you are a relative beginner, and even now, out of those 10 or 15, I'm probably not going to be able to understand absolutely anything in at least 5 of them, right? Not anything, but I'm not going to be able to get the meat of it. But I mean, yes, they are very well studied, and so you have certain things that you can hang your hat on, based on which you assess your opportunities and weigh your decisions.
Yeah, the science of porphyry deposits can go very, very deep, I've learned. I've delved in the rabbit hole, and I got to that point where I'm like, I don't understand a single thing this guy is saying at this point. It's just way over my head. Okay, I'm going to stop here. It's
and look, that's completely normal. You also have these situations where, and this might be me being a slightly delusional, but I've heard from multiple people who have been doing this for a long time that you can actually have a pretty significant advantage in the business by not being a geologist, right? Because geologists are, let's say that they, in a good chunk of examples, they lack pragmatism. And usually geologists tend to not be, what I would call a market animal, right? Not just geologists, but engineers as well. They're not really market people. And you need to be market oriented in order to assess a business opportunity, a business decision, to assess whether something is investable or not, right? In a good amount of situations, it can be even positive that you're not a geo, right? Sometimes, you're a chess player, right? Mm-hmm. And you know that saying that, I'm going to butcher it, right? But, a good chess game is a sign of a gentleman, but an extremely good or like a superb chess game is a sign of a wasted life, right?
Yes.
You have to, yes.
Is that a Serbian expression?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
don't think
Yeah.
so.
I mean, I think
Because
I've
I
heard
heard,
it before, but I haven't heard that
right,
in a long time. That's an old school quote. And yeah,
right.
so,
Yes, it is. Yeah.
like I got to that point at like age 18 and I said, you know what? I'm going to play football and party with these girls here at college and stop the chess. I'm not going to waste my life on chess.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about some stocks. Like let's have some fun. I got like three on my mind. I want to just sort of hear where you're at. Uh, is there a stock that you're not okay with talking about? Like if we talk about, like Awale or Pampa or, Electrum, are
No,
those
I'm
all
good.
okay?
No, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about
I mean,
Pampa.
there's,
Pampa Metals, which is PM on the CSE. I have a small holding in
mm,
this. There's been a lot of news lately, and I'm hoping you can maybe explain it to us a little better than how I understand it right now. Like this is a company that's drilling a porphyry system in Argentina. They have assays pending. They have a financing open, and then they just announced an acquisition of another company. A very interesting set of news.
yeah, yeah. So I did own a bit of Pampa, but I took profits there because, and it wasn't a big position. But the reason why I sold is I can't buy CSE, right, on Interactive, and I was on OTC, and it's hell how liquid it is. So um, uh, I just didn't want to sit in that, and it wasn't that big of a position, so that's why I got out. But so I don't have a dog in the race right now, right? But it's a name that I've followed for a while. And I think the CEO of Pampa is he's a shrewd operator, and he's hungry. He wants and needs a win. He speaks perfect Spanish, so he's quite good to be operating in South America. And I mean, all of those things that you're saying are true. There are like three things going on at the same time, like assay spending, open financing. What is it, about $3 million, and then they do an acquisition. So for somebody who is just coming now in to look at it, it might be confusing. But this acquisition that they're doing is actually, in my mind, potentially a huge deal, right? And the reason why it is potentially a huge deal is because there is a potentially huge underlying asset in the acquisition, right? And to put the whole deal in very simple terms, the Pampa now owns 80% of Cobrasco, which is the porphyry discovery in Colombia. And they are also getting the IOCG Mantao license from Rugby, which is right next door to Marimaca Copper in Chile. And yes, in the meanwhile, they have this Pucanes porphyry project. It's more of kind of a breccia, but yes, a porphyry in right next to Aldebaran's Alter project in San Juan. So let's go from the back end there for a moment. We mentioned Pucanes last, but let's go from it first because it's the first thing in row. Well, the problem with that and why the market cap is around 15 to 20 million Canadian, which is basically just a fresh junior valuation, is there is a lot of gloom around the company's ability to have a strong negotiating hand, being just right next door to Alter, right? Because it is, Pucanes working out is contingent upon Alter going ahead and being built at some point, right? With about 150, 200, 300 million tons, whatever you want to think about Pucanes, high end is, it doesn't cut it. If you had 200 million tons of, say 0.4 or so grades or something like that in a easily accessible place in BC, that might be very sexy, right? But in high end is you're not relevant. There is that, as I said, gloom of the market perceiving the company as unable to have a strong negotiating position when the time is right. I do believe that Aldebaran guys wanted to acquire this license in the past. I do not know this for sure, but this is something that would make a lot of sense as an addition to Alter. But at this point, the last thing Alter needs is like more tonnage. You can say that they maybe need higher grade tonnage, but they do not need just more tonnage. So they're not in a rush to be they have no reason to be forthcoming to Pampa. It just, that is I think the reason why it just hasn't picked up steam. The story hasn't picked up steam. Even though like the geology is quite beautiful from the porphyry standpoint, right? So that's thing number one. Thing number two, yes, they have an open financing. I forgot the terms of it, but it just, I think, classic half warrant. I mean, they just have to finance. You spend. I was just there right next to Buchanan at Altar 2 weeks ago or so, it's let's just say it's a hard place to operate. So you need a lot of money, and so I'm not surprised by the extra financing. And now we get to this deal. I'm gonna pat myself on the back very slightly here, but as soon as Rugby had those put out that news with them apparently losing the license, the water license for the project in that Colombian jungle, I went to Jordan, who is the IR guy for Pampa now, and I told him, like, Pampa CEO should go to Rugby and do something with Rugby. They have too many things. Their portfolio actually looks quite good, but Rugby needs serious changes. The guys are too old. They blew out the share structure extremely hard, and something needs to be done, you know. They just need to come to a decision and make a move finally. I don't want to or maybe we should dive a bit more into Rugby, because I do have a slight history with it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, discovery.
It's a very, yeah, it's a very interesting story, because I think this could be a big lesson for anybody who is paying attention to it and watching it, because and the lesson would be the headline of the lesson would be indecisiveness kills. So what happened here, and you can find my posts. Twitter search function is a bit shitty, but you can find my posts on Rugby from 2022, and I actually wrote it up in June of 22. And the reason how I even learned about the name is, if I recall correctly, I think somebody told me that they came from a conference and they heard about this thing where the CEO covered an entire financing, right? And I was like, okay, what's this? So I looked at it, and when I saw the deck, I saw this porphyry thing in a remote jungle in Colombia, and then I opened the technical report, read it, and I was like, this is very obvious. It looked like you don't even need geophysics for that. Like, it's literally standing right there. You go and you drill. It's that simple. And so when I learned that the guys were going to start drilling in about October 22, I bought stock like 2 or 3 months before that. They made a discovery. I was up over a double, like 110% or so. I didn't sell anything. And then 1 month went by, 2 months went by, like 6 months went by. And nothing was happening. They ran out of money. They drilled 2.5 holes. The third hole got stuck into a fault, and they were looking for solutions, right? Because bear in mind, this is basically $1,000 US per meter drilling. You need a helicopter, and it's not an easy place to work in. But what was really interesting about it, these guys who actually they're serious people. They have really big successes. They had really big success in the past. They went, and this is what I love, they went in immediately and they drilled, the first 2 holes were 1 kilometer each, right? So they, to put it in very rough terms, they weren't fucking around. So it looked great. You could maybe whine that you want higher grades in that place, but for first pass work, it looked absolutely amazing. I didn't sell the stock. The stock went down on that high because the company wasn't basically putting out any news on what the next step is. And then I sold it like 10% or 15. I can't remember, but like 10% or 15% down. Or maybe it was even flat, but it doesn't even matter at this point. And so time went by, and it was obvious that they were looking for strategic solutions, right? They were talking, I guess like they had probably like 10 site visits from major parties there by now. It just amounted to nothing. What I assume happened in the backstage is some parties decided to walk away, and other parties weren't too happy with the terms that the company was putting up. I think this was I don't know what it was, but what happened? It was basically over 2 years of inactivity, and the company kept financing itself, partly partly with CEO's money, and partly with other people putting in more. I mean, what I assume is thinking that the team was going to come out with something, with a good deal. But there was like literally no deal happened, right? And so what you ended up with over 2 years later is a blown out share structure. And they finally, recently, a couple of months ago, went to do a 5 million or so financing to drill a bit more, 100% owned. And then they apparently lost that license as a cherry on top, right? And the stock went to zero. So it was absolutely obvious at that point that somebody needs to come in, or the guys just need to walk out, or something like that. They're too old. They took it to zero, and they have a potentially fantastic asset on their hands. That's, yes, not easy to operate, but geologically speaking, it's a massive discovery, right? So that is the background of Rugby. So now we come to Pampa, and I think this all happened thanks to Pampa CEO, honestly. I do not know the full background, what happened in the last 2 or 3 months or whatever, and how they negotiated, but my guess is that this all happened because of Pampa CEO. And I think that the guys at Pampa now, the setup now is basically they own 80% of it, and the Rugby spin-out company that's going to appear either on TSX-V or ASX, I'm not sure. That spin-out is going to be 20% free carry to feasibility study, right? So basically, all the drilling and whatnot is going to be covered by the operator. And I mean, owning 80% of a massive discovery that can amount to something very serious, and I'm talking billions of tons, is not a, it's not a small thing. So what they're going to need to do is, yes, they're gonna close this 3 million financing, but they're going to need to work really hard on the corporate end on how to properly sell this story to both the Australian and Canadian markets. They do have some very nice shareholders there already who are quite big, like 5+%, that are certainly going to be helping with that. And after that, they should, I think they should just raise $10 million or more and just go in hard. I assume that they may even start drilling by the end of this year. And so you may ask, what about those permits that were lost? Well, we'll see, right? So that's
yeah. And is this
one.
a pivot? I mean, is this a pivot for Pampa? Are they going away from the Argentina, projects?
Kind of. You could view it like that, but so Joe has been saying for a while that they were looking for another asset, because what he wants is year-round news flow, and you can't have year-round news flow if you have limited exploration season in say 3.5k meters or 4 kilometers, and it's right. So you can't have a year-round news flow. So that's something that he has been working on to secure a second asset for Pampa, and now he secured 2, right? So there is some optionality with the Mantao license in Chile. They have this Colombian thing, which is honestly is going to require guts, is going to require luck, and is going to require money. And where does it end up in, say, 5 years? I have no idea. But the fact is that it's just a massive discovery, yeah, we'll see.
Okay, let's talk about, the Awale story. So this is, how I first kind of came to know you. Obviously last year was a big year for the company with the Charger results and BBM. And now they're drilling on their 100% own ground. And this is really a company that backwards and forwards. So can you give us a full update?
Yeah, for sure I can. And, yeah, there's a bit of a history with that one, right? Well, nothing too much new has happened in the last, say, 6 months or so. Other than, a lot of work is being done and is going to be done this year. But the biggest highlight, I think in the near term, and something that, I believe, most of the market is watching for, is drilling on the Lando target, the big one in the north, that this is on the joint venture ground. So that's going to happen soon. And of course, drilling on, small amount of initial drilling on 100% owned license, which is right next to the joint venture ground, right? So those are two things that could heavily impact the stock to the upside in the near term, at whatever the market cap is right now, maybe 40 million Canadian, right? So the reason why the market cap is so low, actually, to take a quick step back, I think the current market cap doesn't have any upside priced into it, right? So I'm not saying that everybody here should go in and buy the stock, no. But there is just no credit being given in advance to the company or to the team. And the reason for this is, well, I have voiced my opinion publicly that I think that they just failed to convey enthusiasm, right? Let's put it that way. But this is, I think, actually a smaller problem compared to the gloomy perception of the joint venture with Newmont, right? So there are a lot of outstanding questions of what happens with this if this is not actually a Newmont project in the end, and then does that mean that the company is going to get strangled by its major partner and so on and so forth? So I think that providing towards the end of this year, providing some clarity on this end, whatever that means, I think there are avenues for this to be extremely beneficial for both parties. Providing some clarity on this end is going to help a lot with the market. It's going to help a lot with the market perception of the company, right? I do, however, find it funny that you have other names that maybe have one drill hole or no drill hole trading at like 100 million plus market caps because somebody invested in it, and I guess everybody believes that people can bend rocks. But it is what it is, right? And this is a very, very perfect example of, again, call it an instrument that trades irrespective of where gold goes, right? So Awale, I believe, would still be 35, 40, 45 million Canadian market cap, even if gold was $2,000 right now. And if you sign up to do things like this, then you shouldn't complain that, for example, Awale or any other company you chose is not up 20 or 30% together with gold. It's just how it is. So, yeah, those are some quick thoughts on it. I'm guessing like big catalyst from those two targets in the near term. And there's actually a third one as well. I'm not sure how the market is going to react to this, but I don't think that the Empire discovery, which is in the southern part of the joint venture ground, I don't think that the Empire discovery is broadly recognized by the market. And the reason why I believe this is this discovery was basically made in 2019, right? And then what happened after that with the company happened, it went effectively to zero. We picked it up at around below 3 million US market cap. And then you know the rest of the story. But I think the broad market doesn't really know about this one. And it's not a huge thing at all. Maybe the footprint of it is quite wide, and there's potential to amount to, say, maybe even 1 million ounces in the end, right? But maybe some results from Empire in the near term could generate some interest as well, because a bunch of people are going to be thinking, hey, this is actually new. You know, we weren't accounting for it because most of our attention was on BBM and those crazy holes from the charger breccia that actually lit up the fire, you know, below the stock.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah, that was a good update on Awale. So let's go to Serbia. Bambino Project.
Yep.
They put out news a couple days ago. Market didn't like it. I read the news. I thought it was fine, but they basically said, hey, we drilled 2 holes and it looks like, you know, we didn't really hit much in these 2 holes, but we know where to go next, right?
Right. Well, I think some shareholders, like if you look at Crascat Capital's update, wouldn't agree with the last part of your sentence there, in terms of the quote unquote knowing where they go next, right? I'm not going to comment too much on that. That was a pretty silly statement. But it's very early. And, so just for a quick step back here, I do have a bit of a background with the company. I've been not involved, but I've known about it since its private days, right? And the first time I went to Bor there, for those who don't know, Bor is the mining town I mean, basically the main mining place in Serbia and the center of Zijin's copper district here. There are basically four or five operating copper porphyry mines here, and it's actually one of the best copper districts almost nobody knows about. So I went there in 2023, and then I for the second time after the company IPO'd via the reverse takeover of former Medgold, I went there last August as well, and I actually did like what I saw, and the reason why I went to the target itself and with the team is the data that they put up, which was and still is actually quite compelling and actually quite comparable to what Dundee Precious Metals has on the other side of the TMC. And TMC is the geological name for the volcanic corridor, northwest-southeast corridor that runs through this part of Serbia. It's called the Timok Magmatic complex. And for a long time, the geological dogma has been that there is nothing outside of this, right? And so if you look at where Dundee's ground is positioned and where their Choka Rakita discovery, Skarn discovery is, it's roughly around the border of the Timok Magmatic complex, right? But it's still produced by more or less the same intrusions. So Electrum's ground is on the other side of it, roughly diagonally from Dundee's ground. The early data from the project is comparable with some higher copper tenors and copper amounts on surface compared to Dundee, because maybe Dundee guys have copper on surface too, but what they're showing publicly, I believe, is just gold soils. So that was very interesting. There are some carbonate rocks on Electrum's license as well. It's not a small license either, so it's not like a postage stamp or anything. There's plenty of space to explore, and that's why I went there, right? And I had a twofold case for it. The bull case is they go in, they drill this what was a pretty obvious looking intrusion on surface. They called it like a potential porphyry, but it was obvious that it's definitely not, doesn't look like a classic porphyry, right? It does have the fingerprints of there definitely being an intrusion there, and it's actually mapped as a small outcrop on surface. But my bull case was they're gonna drill this, hit continuity right off the bat, and get some bulk tonnage grades, what you would expect. It's nice for bulk tonnage copper gold, right? Say 0.3 or something like that. And then, we see where we go from there. But the bull case is they go in and they drill something continuous, and the stock re-rates, right? And that's all very nice. But the base case is when you go into a very greenfield program, you are unlikely to get a discovery right off the bat. It just not, right? So the base case is, because of how good this looks early on, they're going to at least go into something that you would definitely be able to hang your hat on, the fact that it's a fertile system, right? And in this base case, I actually had, not that I'm being a general after the battle here, but I actually had a concern that this is actually a skarn system, similar to what Dundee has on the other side. And why this is a concern is because even though skarn is intrusion-related geology, most of them have let's say vicissitudes with its continuity, right? And you need to figure out where the best part of it is and where the main contact of the intrusion with the carbonate rocks. It doesn't have to be carbonate rocks, but with the mineralizing, with the host rocks is. And, so it takes a bit of time to figure out the best part of it. And if you look at, on the other side again, if you look at Choka Rakita, that deposit is roughly dipping at, say, 45, 50, 60 degrees towards the southeast. It's dipping towards the Timok Magmatic complex, and it is at a depth of 400 plus meters, 400 to 500 meters or so. And there are the hits that Dundee got above, so in the upper 400 meters, were either empty or were like discontinuous streaks of mineralization that just do not hang together, right? And the news release that you just referred to from Electrum from the other day, from this week, is exactly alluding to discontinuous mineralization that is unlikely to hold together immediately, right? So that is, I guess, because of high expectations, that is why the stock sold off. There were a lot of retail people, and there are some, there have been some promoters around the stock as well. Crosscat has a big audience as well, and that's what generated a lot of interest in the company. And I guess because of the 2014 reservoir mineral success with Chukaru Peki, Canada finds it really easy to understand this opportunity, right? So there was plenty of positivity very early on, as soon as the company came out with this target data, and those say high expectations are being extinguished a bit. So that's why the stock sold off.
And, do you still own Electrum?
No, I don't. And it's so small of a position that it was so small of a position, as I said in my post, that I got out basically flat. I did get in relatively early. I didn't get the bottom tick, of course, but I do not hold it right now. It is something that I would look to re-enter instantly once the team figures out what the hell is going on, right? It is a very similar situation to the recent news release from, and I also posted about this, from Arizona Gold and Silver. I'm very eager to see, and that can still end up being a significant success, but I'm personally going to wait for confirmation on that. So just to touch on what I just said in terms of what the hell is going on here, right? I think, and I want to catch up with the company on this end. They need to decide whether or not they're hunting for a porphyry or they're hunting for a skarn, because when you look at the deck and when you talk to them just roughly, you're not going to get a straight answer of what the exact target they're looking for is. And this is normal, right? I'm not knocking on anybody or anything, but as they do no more work now, they also have BHP in their ear as well. They're going to have to decide what they're actually hunting for, because that is how you're going to be aiming your drill holes, right? And why this is important is, well, again, look at Choka Rakita and just realize that that discovery happened by hitting this southeastern dipping thing at about a 400 meter depth or so. So you can easily have a situation here where you drill these holes, which are, say, about 300 meters vertical at most, the two initial holes, and they are cross-cutting each other. You drill them, and they also put out geophysics this week. And if you be a bit naive for a second and look at that graphic, they're definitely not in the conductive parts of it or anything like that. So you can easily drill below these holes and get straight into a discovery, right? These systems just work like this. So this is not a classic porphyry blob that you can test with, say, 3 or 4 targets. Actually, let me correct myself. A near surface porphyry blob that you can test with 3 or 4 drill holes, and you can say, hey, we covered actually quite a bit of volume with these 3 or 4 drill holes, and there doesn't seem to be a giant porphyry here, so you can move on, right? Of course, not all porphyry targets are as simple as this, but I'm just making a rough example here.
Vukasin, fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed this. I get to go to my dentist appointment now, but I really appreciate this. I think I learned some things, and I hope people who tuned in did as well. Let's do it again. I feel like there's a lot more ground to cover. There's a lot more we can talk about. But cheers, and talk soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers.